Yes.
Councilor Carney?
Yes.
Councilor Dwight?
Yes.
Councilor Klein?
Yes.
Councilor LaBarge?
Yes.
Councilor Murphy?
Yes.
Councilor Nash?
Yes.
And Councilor O'Donnell?
Yes, approved in second reading. Next is 19.082, in order to purchase 5.8 acres in the Broadbrook Fitzgerald Lake Greenway.
Move approval. Second.
Okay, made and second. Any discussion on second reading? Hearing no discussion, let's have a roll call.
Councilor Bidwell?
Yes.
Councilor Carney?
Yes.
Councilor Dwight?
Yes.
Councilor Klein?
Yes.
Councilor LaBarge?
Yes.
Councilor Murphy?
Yes.
Councilor Nash?
Yes.
Councilor O'Donnell?
Yes.
And Councilor Shara?
Yes.
That is approved in second reading. Next is 19.084, in order to appropriate fiscal year 2020 general fund budgets, the second reading.
Move approval.
Okay, made by Councilor Dwight.
Second.
Second by Councilor Nash. Further discussion. I understand budget hearings went well, and you had a very lengthy meeting that night and the following night in the City Council, and lots of discussion about the budget. So, Councilor LaBarge.
Yes, I was just wondering if I could have Susan Wright come forth, because I'd like to just question her on something.
If Director Wright is willing to come forward for a question, we always are happy to have.
She's always good. Okay. Yes, Susan, on our budget book, and I mentioned it 2 weeks ago, about the senior center with the $20,000 in the gift department.
So I think you're asking me about the revolving fund
Yes,
order.
right. And because I had questioned the mayor, he didn't know he had you come forth, and you said, and I told you that department is
So,
closed.
Councilor, I think this is going to appear later on the agenda when we get to the revolving fund order. So
No, this is in here, in our budget,
this is
for the
order.
general fund budget.
Oh, okay, so let me go to, are you talking about the senior center
20,000.
budget?
Yeah.
The revolving fund? The revolving fund for the gifts, for the
Yes.
gift store? Yeah, that's coming up in the revolving fund order.
Oh, okay.
So
Yeah.
that'll be coming up a little bit later, and we can certainly address that then.
And also, I have another question for the mayor, too, after. I'd like to know if you can give me, because many people have been calling me, how much... is with the school?
Yeah, that would be the school choice. Rainy day fund, but it's school choice monies that they receive based on students that choice into the district, and then they are used in the following year to help support the.
Ready to go? Okay, cool. Hello, this is the Northampton City Council meeting of September 19th, 2019. It is International Talk Like a Pirate Day.
No.
Yes, it is. Google that as well. These proceedings are being audio and video recorded. My name is Ryan O'Donnell. First, I'll ask if there's any public comment this evening? And it does not appear that there is any. No? Okay, hearing no public comment, we'll convene the council immediately, and I'll ask for a roll call to do that, please.
Councilor Bidwell.
Here.
Councilor Carney.
Present.
Councilor Dwight.
Here.
Councilor Klein. Here. Councilor Labarge.
Present.
Councilor Murphy.
Here.
Councilor Nash.
Here.
Councilor O'Donnell.
Here.
And Councilor Shara.
Here.
Okay, so we're convened. Are there any announcements from councilors? Any subjects? Councilor Shara.
As we know, in the new term, there'll be a lot of new counselors. Many counselors are leaving us. And so Counselor Dwight and I were just discussing that we think we should take a photo of this council. The last time a council photo was taken was, I think, that one, which was quite a while ago. So we'd like to find a time before a council meeting in the next few meetings to go ahead and do that. So if you know that you're going to not be at a meeting in say, October or early November, how about let me know, and then we want to give you, notice that we're going to take this photo. So we'll let you know which meeting it's going to be. Okay.
Very, very nice idea. Cool.
It's worth noting that there was no documented evidence, at least photographic evidence, that Mayor Narkowitz ever served on the council.
Ah.
There was no class photo with him yet. I would like to point out it's because I wasn't on the council and no one else seemed to want to take a picture. So
I'm sure there are inauguration photos and things like that.
they've all faded.
Is he really armed?
Any other announcements? Councilor Dwight.
The report on the Charter Review Committee. We are now actually starting the process of finalizing a report, and which includes minor housekeeping changes, but then some more significant changes, many of which I've already related to you all in the past. There was how the report should be done. Also, discussion relative to the ongoing challenge of outreach, particularly to communities that are underrepresented or marginalized, and basically the best that we can do at this point, I think, is to try and either book a meeting at Jackson Street School in October or JFK, do some outreach in Spanish and in English, and in the hopes that people would have some interest. The one point is that if any new issues are identified, it's, depending on the enormity of those issues, we could include it, but we have December 31st deadline to finish our to actually get our final report to present to this council and the mayor. But it's also noted that this is just the mandated review, but charter changes can also come in the interim period as well. So if larger issues are identified, they can be carried over and discussed, and then a petition, if it warrants a petition of the legislature to change, we can still submit those even without a charter review committee, but just as a community action. So, but there, our ongoing frustration with that issue throughout the whole charter review process is trying to get community engagement has been tricky. There were 3 public speakers who, former Councilor Maria Tomasco, former Councilor Michael Kirby, and Fred Zimnock, speaking about their desire to have an annual report that, well, we were struggling with what form it would take. Similar, we do have an annual report, basically, it's the budget. But their concern was access to information that's mostly online, and their concern was that it's difficult to access if you're not particularly adept at searching for things online. So there was a long discussion about that, about whether to embed that in the charter or to review and consider something like that as policy or as ordinance or something else later on later down the line. I think the consensus was essentially that since the language would be too amorphous, you couldn't identify it very clearly, and it would be aspirational, it really probably wouldn't be, the charter probably wouldn't be the most appropriate place to put it. So that is
Oh, that's great.
synopsis
Thank
of the conversation.
And you're still weighing whether to finalize a report, or a draft report, before the end of the year,
yes.
which might generate
The
more
idea-
interest.
Yeah, the hope was that if we do a draft report, that it would generate interest in the community, but it would also, given the fact that, as Councilor Shara noted that we're in the middle of an election season, there are a number of candidates who may have some thoughts about this, or might come up in the process of the forums, the discussions about charter changes, and that also hopefully consequently engage more public thought
Yeah.
and discussion.
Well, thank you.
Thank you.
A very informative report. Any other announcements from anybody? No? Mr. Mayor, do you have any communications or anything you'd like to say? I do not. Okay. Let's see what else. So we have the consent agenda next, and that contains the following items, which I will read, and at the request of any counselor, we can remove them for a separate vote, otherwise there's no discussion. Contains the minutes of September 5th, 2019. Appointments to various committees that have all received positive recommendations from the Committee on City Services. The next set are all for a term running from July 2019 to June 2022. And this is to the Arts Council, Eamon Crowley Edge, 56 Summer Street, Northampton. To the Central Business Architecture Committee, Melissa Fridio, 123 South Street, number 2. Also to the Central Business Architecture Committee, Bridget Goggins of 783 Bridge Road. To the Housing Partnership, Rich Abuza, 245 Chestnut Street, Florence. To the Planning Board, Euripides de Oliveira, 35 New South Street, Northampton. The following are appointments for referral to the Committee on City Services, so they'll come and they'll come back. And these are all, I'll just read them. To the Trust Fund Committee, Catherine Foote Newman. Since they're going to come, I'm just going to go through it. Catherine Foote Newman, 697 Bridge Road, Northampton, July 2019 to June 2022. Housing Partnership, Reverend Todd Weir, 124 Mosier Street, Northampton, July 2019 to June 2022. Parks and Recreation Committee, Kathleen M. Elliott, 39A Florence Street, Leeds, October 2019 through June 2021. To the Planning Board, Alan Verson, 508 Kennedy Road, Leeds, for full membership, October 2019 to June 2022, and David Whitehill of 60 Washington Avenue, Northampton, associate member for a term October 2019 through June 2021. So that concludes the consent agenda. Do I hear a motion or any removals?
No removals, but there is a typo.
Okay.
It's Melissa Fridlow, not I-O, but L-O.
Okay. Noted. Thank you.
And then, I move the consent agenda.
Okay. Made and seconded. All those in favor of the consent agenda, please say aye. Aye. Any opposed, any abstentions? So that is approved, and we will recess for finance.
Excellent. Laura, would you read the roll of finance, please?
Sure. Counselor Murphy,
Here.
Counselor Carney,
Present.
Counselor Labarge,
Present.
and Counselor Shara.
Present.
Thank you. First item is the approval of minutes of our September meeting. Do we have a motion?
Vote to approve. Second.
Any changes, alterations, additions? Hearing none. All in favor?
Aye.
Excellent. All right, the first order we have tonight is 19130, in order to increase energy and sustainability revolving fund threshold from $150,000 to $250,000. Order that the fiscal year 2020 spending limit for the energy and sustainability revolving fund be raised from $150,000 to $250,000. Do you have a motion?
Make a motion.
Second.
And the mayor is going to explain to us what's up with this.
Yes, good evening. This is actually a request from Chris Mason, the city's energy officer. We are going to be doing some large energy projects. You may have heard the good news. Earlier this week, we got a major Green Communities grant of $250,000 that will also incorporate matching funds from the city, as well as the utility companies will be contributing funds to it. And when we set our sort of annual limit from that fund, we set it at 150,000. And Mr. Mason said that given the funds that are going to be going in and out for these projects and another project as well, that he wanted to see if we could raise it up to, his recommendation is to raise it to $250,000 from the $150,000. They're going to be adding some additional sale of SRECs to the fund as well, which again is going to be going towards the Green Communities project. So he's concerned that he's bumping up against that $150,000 limit. So this would, we obviously just set the limit as part of the budget, but and this is a process that he works with the Energy and Sustainability Commission to vet projects and vets them through me, and then we execute them. And these are funds that are directly derived from SRECs or smart credits that we then put back into energy and sustainability projects.
Questions for the mayor? No? No questions? Good news. We've got some money to spend. Then all in favor of a positive recommendation in finance, please say aye.
Aye.
All right, the next is 19133, order for some 2020 budget transfers. Order that the following budgetary transfers be made to transfer funds originally budgeted for personnel services to OM to be used for consulting services to effectuate efficiencies in the munis payroll and human resources modules. And this would be human resources permanent salaries, a total of $35,000, and that would be turned over to OM for professional and technical services. We have a motion, finance?
Make a motion.
Second.
And the mayor can talk to us about what's up with this one.
Yeah, this is a request, as it says, to reallocate some funds that were originally allocated to salaries in HR to the OM line item for this Munis project that we would like to work on, and I can actually have Susan Wright talk a little bit more about it. We had a member of the HR staff who just recently left. They actually left to become the HR director at Smith Vocational because the longtime Smith Vocational HR person retired. And so we've been thinking about how we want to reallocate resources within the office, and one of the top priorities for both the finance director and actually the HR director is to try to work on some updates and work on some workflow efficiencies within the Munis accounting and payroll software. And so the idea would be we work with Randy. The counselor knows him. He's somebody who's a Munis expert who works with the assessors. He's somebody who does work on the assessor databases. And the idea is to allocate some additional funds to have him take on some of these projects. We're going through some upgrades to Munis. They're moving away. They're going to be moving into a new sort of dashboard system, kind of like going to Windows, kind of a thing. And we've gone through multiple versions. And there's some new features that we really feel like we would be more efficient if we could get them activated. So we think that the resources and the HR director supports holding off on refilling that position and allocating them to this outside technical assistance in HR as well as in finance and in payroll. So that's why we're not adding any new money to the budget. We're just saying that this is money that is now going to be unspent because of this personnel change, and we want to allocate it to these consulting services.
Questions for the mayor? All right, hearing none, all in favor of a positive recommendation of finance, please say aye. Aye. Opposed? The next is 19.134, in order to appropriate stabilization funds to the police station remediation, order that the city appropriates $79,000 from the stabilization fund to complete remediation of design and construction defects at the police station facility causing water infiltration issues. Do we have a motion?
Make a motion.
And a second?
This is a transfer to, as the order says, and I already discussed with the city council in executive session the background on this, so you have that briefing in executive session because of the ongoing litigation.
Very good. So as a result of that, there's going to be no discussion. All in favor of a positive recommendation of finance, please say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? And the last one is happy news for our constituents here. It's 19135, in order to suspend parking fees on certain days that are upcoming. On the following days, collection of fees for on-street and off-street parking spaces, excluding the garage, shall be suspended. It would be Friday, November 29th, historically known as Black Friday, Saturday, November 30th, which is Small Business Saturday, Tuesday, December 24th, which is Christmas Eve, and Tuesday, December 31st, which is New Year's Eve. So we do have a motion, Finance?
Make a motion.
Second?
Second.
This is a tradition.
This is a recurring request that we've made the last several years, and we're just trying to get it in motion now because November's coming. It's kind of scary. Yeah.
All right, any question or discussion? This is pretty self-explanatory. All in favor of a positive recommendation of Finance, please say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Thank you. And that is the end of our agenda, so a motion to adjourn.
Move to adjourn.
Adjourn.
All in favor?
Aye.
Thank you.
Thank you. So let's go through these that you just heard. Financial orders. First, 19130, in order to increase energy and sustainability revolving fund threshold from $150,000 to $250,000.
Approve.
Second.
Made and second. Any discussion on this order in the full city council? Okay, then have a roll call, please.
Counselor Bidwell,
Yes.
Counselor Carney.
Yes?
Counselor Dwight,
Yes.
Counselor Klein,
Yes.
Counselor Labarge,
Yes.
Counselor Murphy,
Yes.
Counselor Nash,
Yes.
Counselor O'Donnell,
Yes.
and Counselor Shara.
Yes.
Okay, that's approved in first reading. Next is 19133, in order for fiscal year 2020 budget transfers.
Move to approve.
Made and seconded. Any discussion on this order? Roll call, please.
Counselor Carney.
Yes.
Counselor Dwight,
Yes.
Counselor Klein,
Yes.
Counselor Labarge.
Yes.
Counselor Murphy,
Yes.
Counselor Nash.
Yes.
Counselor O'Donnell.
Yes.
Counselor Shara.
Yes.
And Counselor Bidwell.
Yes.
Okay, that's approved on first reading. Next is 19134, in order to appropriate stabilization funds to police station remediation.
Move to approve.
Okay.
Second.
Made and seconded. Any discussion on this order? You wouldn't expect it, would you? So, if not, let's have a roll call, please.
Counselor Dwight,
Yes.
Counselor Klein,
Yes.
Counselor Labarge,
Yes.
Counselor Murphy.
Yes.
Counselor Nash,
Yes.
Counselor O'Donnell,
Yes.
Counselor Shara,
Yes.
Counselor Bidwell,
Yes.
and Counselor Carney.
Yes. Suspend the rules.
Approved on first reading. I hear a motion to suspend the rules to allow for two readings, and seconded by Counselor Dwight. Any discussion on the suspension of rules? Hearing none, all those in favor of suspending rules, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, any abstentions, rules suspended. Do I hear a motion on second reading?
Move second reading, please.
And do I hear a second? Second, Counselor Bidwell. Any discussion on this time around? No? Okay. So, roll call, please.
Counselor Klein,
Yes.
Counselor Labarge,
Yes.
Counselor Murphy.
Yes.
Counselor Nash.
Yes.
Counselor O'Donnell,
Yes.
Counselor Shara,
Yes.
Counselor Bidwell,
Yes.
Counselor Carney.
Yes.
And Counselor Dwight.
Yes.
Okay, approved on second reading. Next, 19135, in order to suspend parking fees on certain days.
Move to approve.
Everyone moves and approves to approve that. So it is on the floor. Any discussion on this? Roll call, please.
Counselor Labarge,
Yes.
Counselor Murphy.
Yes.
Counselor Nash,
Yes.
Counselor O'Donnell,
Yes.
Counselor Shara,
Yes.
Counselor Bidwell,
Yes.
Counselor Carney.
Yes.
Counselor Dwight,
Yes.
and Counselor Klein.
Yes.
It's approved on first reading. There are three financial orders that are on second reading, and they are these: 19126, in order to appropriate transportation infrastructure enhancement funds, $6,157 for Burt's Pit Road reconstruction.
Move to approve.
Second.
Made and second. Any discussion? Hearing no discussion, I'll ask for roll call, please.
Counselor Murphy,
Yes.
Counselor Nash.
Yes.
Counselor O'Donnell,
Yes.
Counselor Shara,
Yes.
Counselor Bidwell,
Yes.
Counselor Carney.
Yes.
Counselor Dwight,
Yes.
Counselor Klein. And
Yes.
Counselor Labarge.
Yes.
Okay, that is approved on second reading. Next, 19127, in order to authorize intermunicipal agreement for Young Adult Empowerment Collaborative of Western Mass. Motion on this from anyone?
Move to approve.
Move to approve and seconded by Counselor Dwight, I believe. Okay, so any discussion on second reading? Then let's have a roll call.
Counselor Nash,
Yes.
Counselor O'Donnell,
Yes.
Counselor Shara.
Yes.
Counselor Bidwell,
Yes.
Counselor Carney.
Yes.
Counselor Dwight,
Yes.
Counselor Klein.
Yes.
Counselor Labarge.
Yes.
And Counselor Murphy.
Yes.
Okay, it's approved in second reading. Next, 19129, an order authorizing the lease of the senior center roof for solar panels.
Second.
Okay, made and seconded. Discussion? Let's have a roll call.
Counselor O'Donnell.
Yes.
Counselor Shara.
Yes.
Counselor Bidwell.
Yes.
Counselor Carney.
Yes.
Counselor Dwight.
Yes.
Counselor Klein.
Yes.
Counselor Labarge.
Yes.
Counselor Murphy.
Yes.
And Counselor Nash.
Yes.
That is approved on second reading. 19138, in order to authorize community choice aggregation to reduce greenhouse gas emissions is next.
Approval?
Second.
So it is made and seconded. I will read it into the record and for the benefit of the public. This is in the City Council, September 19th, 2019, upon the recommendation of Mayor David J. Narkowitz, Planning and Sustainability, Central Services, and the Energy and Sustainability Commission. Again, in order to authorize community choice aggregation to reduce greenhouse gas emissions. Whereas Massachusetts authorizes municipalities to, quote, aggregate the electric load of interested electric customers within its boundaries, end quote, to provide competitive electric supplies, Mass General Law, Chapter 164, Section 134, commonly known as Community Choice Aggregation, CCA. Whereas over 145 Massachusetts municipalities have adopted some form of CCA. Whereas on October 12th, 2012, City Council authorized the city to participate in a CCA through the former Hampshire Council of Governments to allow a greening of the city's electric supply and encourage energy conservation and renewable energy. Whereas the city, in cooperation with Amherst and Pelham, the University of Massachusetts Clean Energy Extension, the Urban Sustainability Directors Network, USDN, and 6 other municipalities around Massachusetts and the United States, has been studying how a CCA can provide competitive electric supplies while prioritizing a reduction in greenhouse gas GHG emissions. Whereas the city, through its Planning and Sustainability, presumably department, and in cooperation with Central Services and outside partners, obtained a grant from USDN to hire outside consultants to study the most effective ways that a CCA can reduce greenhouse gas emissions. In parentheses, it's CCA 3.0. Okay? Whereas the draft Northampton Climate Resiliency and Regeneration Plan identifies CCA as a critical strategy, a high impact practice to reduce greenhouse gas emissions. Whereas any Northampton CCA would have dual priorities of procurement of maintaining competitive electric rates and maximizing greenhouse gas emission reductions. Ordered that the mayor is authorized to obtain the necessary data, plans, applications, and regulatory approvals for community choice aggregation, CCA, independently or in joint action with other municipalities, implement CCA, and enter into joint powers agreements with other entities for joint CCAs. So perhaps we could ask the mayor if you'd like to present it first, since he's bringing it to us.
And then I can also have Mr. Fiden speak, since he's my
Please, yes.
representative on the 3 community working group that's been studying this. You may recall several, it was a year plus ago, the council passed a resolution which dealt with a number of things, but one of the recommendations was that the city explore CCA. You did authorize the city to enter into CCA many, many years ago as part of a failed attempt to do it regionally with the Hampshire Council of Governments, which was unsuccessful, so we had actually sort of done it. This is the next generation of CCA, and so we've been working, the 3 towns, 3 communities have been working with UMass. There's been a planning group, a working group, and so the idea is to get this authorization in place to be able to be ready to move forward with it. So it might be helpful to have Mr. Fiden talk to you a little bit about the work of the group and why the 3 communities are bringing these forward to queue this up.
Thank you. So just quick background. I think you all know the background, but to make sure we're all in the same place. So until some number of years ago, all utilities were monopolies for both supply of electricity and distribution. And about 8 or 9 states said utilities are natural monopolies. It's hard to have 2 separate sets of power lines, and so they should be the ones distributing power. But they're not a natural monopoly for producing power. And so the system was deregulated. You can buy your power from National Grid, or you can buy your power from anybody else. And that's been true for a number of years. Most small customers, so the city does not use National Grid, lots of large customers don't use National Grid, but most small customers tend to just do the default and use National Grid. It's easier, frankly, some of the claims from other companies don't actually stand up, and the Attorney General has been investigating some of the other companies for false advertising. So the vast majority of homeowners, small businesses, use National Grid as the default supplier. As part of the law, the state says municipalities can become the default provider of electricity, not distribution. Nothing changes, no new wires come up. But a community can step up and say, we're going to buy power and we're going to, in essence, sell it to the community. You know, almost half the communities in the Commonwealth have done that. And it's a fairly simple process. They're basically doing the same thing utilities are. They're hedging their bets. They're buying very short-term power and slightly less short-term power. And they're not actually buying generation facilities. They're going to a broker, they're going to a staff person, and they're just signing contracts with existing companies who are out there. So we began the process, as the mayor said, you know, almost a decade ago, and what we found quickly is the range of CCAs out there very dramatically. Most, you know, Hadley just got a CCA, Greenfield's had it for a while. Most of the companies are doing it to save customers a couple of cents on the bill. Very little money, but it's a few cents on the bill. Then some communities, and that's where this sort of CCA 1, CCA 2, CCA 3 came from. And then some communities said, well, we want more renewable energy. So we're going to buy what's called renewable energy credits. Somebody provides electricity or renewable energy, and they get a credit for providing renewable energy. So people go out in the market and provide renewable energy. But they tend to buy renewable energy credits from wind power in Montana or Iowa or Texas because it's incredibly inexpensive, right? So there's wind power in Montana that makes sense economically. Somebody's going to build the wind generators anyway and make money. And if they get a few cents from a community in Eastern Mass, so much the better. It helps the bottom line. The problem, and we don't really care where the electrons are produced. It's all, you know, the more green energy we have, the better it is. The problem, the jargon term is additionality. The problem with that effort is those wind generators in Texas, they're going up anyway because the numbers just add up. And so the fact that we're giving them money doesn't create any new renewable energy. And so communities are sort of moving through, you know, we've been using numbers 1, 2, and 3, but it's really a continuum. Communities are beginning to think about what are the ways we can get power that's as local as possible, and we don't necessarily define what local means, but certainly New England, maybe even more local than that. As green as possible. It's not going to be 100% green, but as green as possible, and maybe most important, this additionality. The green energy we're getting is green energy we wouldn't otherwise get. And so that ranges from Cambridge, who's using CCA to do a community solar installation. Cincinnati, who's in our consortium, is doing another community solar installation. To communities who just might do slightly longer power contracts, right? Because if I'm an investor, I want to know I can sell power to you in 5 years, not just in 6 months. The city's already played this game a little bit in terms of you just approved leasing a rooftop for community solar. We have community solar in 2 private installations in town and on the landfill. Those are long-term contracts. So just how do we maximize those things? Minimize risk, maximize those things. We are a small community. I know we think we're the center of the universe, and I think we're the center of the universe. So we've been working with other communities, unlike Boston, who's big enough to be our own CCA. We may not be big enough to get attention for providers. So we've been working with Amherst and Pelham, sort of thinking, well, maybe we're going to be a CCA jointly, maybe not, but at least we're going to explore it together. So we're working with them. We got a $75,000 grant from Urban Sustainability Directors Network. And the reason we got this national grant was we quickly realized that there's not a lot of communities on the cutting edge thinking about where we go. California is, so we're sort of trying to steal from a lot of what California has. There's not a lot here, so we're exploring what makes sense. You know, we want to be cutting edge but not bleeding edge, so we don't want to have, big risks. So we're still exploring those details. The reason we're asking for authority now is, frankly, it helps us as we look for future grants for the project to show a serious commitment from the city that we want to go forward. That's the reason we got this USDN grant, was in part because your vote on the record from 2012 that you wanted to go forward. We could say, we're really serious about this. And so we want to sort of know we can do it. It helps us both negotiating locally with Amherst and Pelham and other communities. It helps us, the whole PVPC region is watching what we're doing, and it helps us with that. And then when we get ready, we want to be able to submit to utility. So there are lots of unknowns. There are 2 members of council on the Energy and Sustainability Commission who've been involved with this conversation. We're certainly happy to keep you in update as you want in the process. But just to be clear, one thing I want to go over this. So if we set up a CCA, we would become the default provider for electricity, but there's no requirement people stay with us. So you can check it, you can opt out anytime you want to opt out. And so, of course, so what you see on the order is the dual goals of maintaining competitive power rates and greenhouse gas emissions. If we charge less than national grid, electricity use will actually go up, which is not our goal. If we charge more than national grid, we're going to lose customers. And once you lose customers, it's really hard to get them back. So we're going to be looking for that sweet spot on, it's not going to be exact parity, but a sweet spot of being as close to parity as possible with national grid rates, but with much greener power supply.
Thank you, Director Flight. Any questions from the council on this? Councilor Klein.
I just have a quick comment that I also made in the Energy and Sustainability Commission meeting, that I'm really grateful to 2 members of our community, Sam Titleman and Adele Franks, who brought this to a couple of councilors, and we did put it into that resolution that we passed, making a recommendation that we consider a CCA model. And I know that we do have a history as a city looking at this model, but it really was through the efforts, I think, of Adele and Sam that we're where we are today with this this piece of it. So I just wanted to publicly thank them for their contribution to this process.
Thank you. Anyone else? I'll just say I'm very supportive of this. Thank you. Thank you for the city's work on this as well as the community. And yeah, we do have a history of pushing this concept forward, so glad to see it reach this point. All right, if there's no other discussion, then this would be eligible for a first vote, and so let's do that, and I'll ask for a roll call, please.
Councilor Shara?
Yes.
Councilor Bidwell?
Yes.
Councilor Carney?
Yes.
Councilor Dwight?
Yes.
Councilor Klein?
Yes.
Councilor Labarge?
Yes.
Councilor Murphy?
Yes.
Councilor Nash?
Yes.
And Councilor O'Donnell?
Yes, so it's approved in first reading. We have 2 petitions for street acceptances. There are a couple items on this agenda where we're trying to break the world's record for the longest agenda items. Laura and I were in competition. This one put her in the lead for the time being, and then I win at the end, so you'll see. It's helpful to explain this, because it is somewhat complicated. The process note is, the process begins, street acceptance that is, with a petition filed with the City Council. Have that in the packet. The council must refer the petition to the planning board and may not proceed to lay out the way, the road, until it receives a report from the planning board, or 45 days elapse after we refer and they don't do anything. The council or an authorized committee thereof must hold a hearing to adjudicate whether convenience and necessity require the laying out of the way. And if we get to that point prior to the hearing, the city council must give notice to the clerk with a copy of the petition at least 15 days prior to the hearing. Notice must be posted in 2 public places and published in the newspaper at least 7 days prior to the hearing. Notice must be mailed by regular mail to be recorded to the recorded owner of land subject to a taking at least 7 days prior to the hearing. And finally, if at the hearing no person interested objects, the council may proceed to lay out the way within 12 months. If the council determines that common convenience and necessity would be served by laying out the way, the council must make the necessary takings to acquire the easements needed for the way. Okay, but all we're doing today is the first part, just so everyone has an idea of that whole process. We've done this before. We have two petitions. One, 19-131, petition for North Street acceptance, and petition 132, petition for Finn Street acceptance. So do I hear a motion to refer to planning? Both of them?
For both the planning board, yes.
Okay.
please.
And because, so we got that referral in the front, and because I think it's okay for, it's good for us to understand what we're referring, I think I'm allowed discussion on this. If there are any questions, we have our Director of Planning and Sustainability here, and the mayor and others, so any questions on this? Councilor Murphy.
Yeah, these are just streets that fell through the cracks. I mean, we're not taking any property, are we? These are just streets that we plowed for.
Small sections.
It's segments of them.
Segments of the streets.
The
that are-
maps,
Were discovered as part of the.
Yeah.
There are maps.
Yeah.
This isn't breaking any new ground.
if you don't, that's okay.
Yes, there are.
This was discovered as part of the Mass DOT analysis for the state-funded work on King Street, and they discovered that these little sections or aprons of the street had not been accepted as public ways. So there's,
Yeah.
we would like to get them taken care of as part of this process, so they'll be eligible
That's
for
Finn.
for the state money to pay for this project.
So I guess that's Finn, and that's north just under the bridge.
It's just the section under the bridge,
Yeah.
yes. That,
Attorney Seawald said there will be some takings in association with this. So just-
yes. Well, takings or negotiated easements or, that we'll do sort of the process we did with Damon Road.
Right.
We'll have a firm that will go out and speak and try to determine who they may owned by. We may do it takings just to clear up the title if it's an owner unknown situation. It may be utilities, we don't know, so that'll be part of the same process.
Okay.
But we need to get this underway just because of the grant funds that are hanging out there.
Yep. So Councilor Nash, did you have a question?
Yeah, in the document from Attorney Seawald, he refers to taking a view. I'm not sure what that means.
Means we go out and look at it.
Right.
Yeah.
Oh, exactly what it says?
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
It's not like slang that the kids are using that you don't know, Jim. Counselor. So, yeah, we just go look at it.
It's probably like colonial era language.
Yeah.
Like, how many rods is the street wide and that kind of stuff, so, yeah, most likely.
Thank you.
So, any other questions? So, a motion on the floor to refer to the planning board. So, you can vote on that motion. All those in favor of referral, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, any abstentions? So that is referred. Both of them.
And for scheduling purposes, Carolyn Mish says it will be on the planning board agenda on September 26th. So since there is notification to the city clerk requirements and publication, I was just going to try to get an idea if the council wanted to have, the earliest we could probably have the hearing is October 17th, because the planning board report will have been received by then, since it's on their agenda the 26th. But, an idea of what time frame you guys would like to, so that I can make sure to fulfill the notice requirements. And that was the earliest date that I thought was possible to fulfill. And the other thing, last time we did it, the full council held the hearing for the layout so I didn't know if it was going to be referred to a subcommittee or if the full council, if we hold the hearing before.
Well, those are good kind of questions. I mean, if it's all the same to the council, we can kind of work them out and just be part of, setting future agendas, unless there's any strong preference that we hear tonight from anybody. Other than that, I think we'll just work that out and put it on the
Okay, very
agenda.
good.
That's okay, great. But it's good to know the general timeline, so thank you, that's good. All right, so now we're on to two ordinances that have not yet been referred. This is 19136, an ordinance to amend Chapter 312 Vehicles and Traffic, and 19137, ordinance to amend Chapter 312 Vehicles and Traffic. I can explain roughly what these things are, because the titles are not particularly descriptive. 136 basically is adding into definitions of meter violation and parking meter, the kind of smartphone mobile payment system that we have updated them with to be in the 21st century. So that's putting that into the ordinance. And the other is, it appears to be proposing to remove a handicap parking space on Pleasant Street off of Gleason Plaza, the first parking space on the westerlymost side of the northerly end of the parking lot, east of the first entrance of Gleason Plaza. That's what it appears to be doing to me. Has the Transportation Parking Commission reviewed these at all?
No?
Okay. All right, so it sounds like it would be reasonable to have a motion to have both of these as a group go to Legislative Matters and the Transportation and Parking Commission.
In reverse order, actually, if we could do that, not that it matters.
What's that?
In reverse order, as you described, it'd go to Transportation Parking
Right.
first, and then to Legislative Matters as a final bit.
Okay.
Not that really.
It will go to both at the same time, and you can take them up when you choose. Great. Okay, any discussion on the referral? So,
Sorry, who was the motion?
Move to refer to
Second.
Legislative Matters and Transportation and Parking.
Second, yeah.
oh, maybe, I'm sorry, did I not get a motion? Okay, now we do. So, any discussion on the motion?
No.
Okay, all those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, any abstentions? So that's, both of them are referred. Now we have ordinances. If we can, Director Fiden, do you have any that you're interested in besides the rezoning one? So let's do that first, so, because you're here. So 19105, an ordinance to rezone 5 parcels from general industrial to office industrial. This provides that Chapter 350, Section 3.4 of the Code of Ordinances be amended by modifying the zoning map of said code to rezone 5 parcels from general industrial GI to office industrial OI, and rezone 1 parcel GI to special conservancy. So, I guess we'll probably waive the reading of the numbers here. This is a public document, and basically a lot of it is done by pictures instead of words, right? We're changing the zoning map? Okay. So would you like to, I would like to hear from you, if you don't mind, just kind of an explanation.
Sure. This started originally, the current owner of it used to be Berkshire Cable, closed the manufacturing business and looked at doing self-storage, which is no longer on the table, but that was their original plan. And they approached us to say office industrial allows more uses than general industrial. Would we consider rezoning it to office industrial? Carolyn Mish from my office and the planning board looked at sort of all the industrial areas in Leeds and said it made sense for all of them. Some of you may remember, if you've been in council for a long time, that when we did the Florence plan many years ago for Florence, we said as manufacturing uses left Florence, we should redo those buildings as office industrial. It gives more flexibility for uses. So when we began with Berkshire Cable, at Berkshire Cable site, Carolyn did an assessment of all the industrial areas in that part of Leeds and recommended all of them went to office industrial. There was a public hearing. I think Councilor Klein was there. We didn't hear any objections. Carolyn met with all 3 of the property owners who were affected, Berkshire Cable, ChartPac, and Mark Bernstein, and they were all either supportive, didn't care, it didn't affect their operations. We haven't heard any objections in the process.
Great, thank you very much, Director Fiden. Does Council from Ward 7 have anything to mention about this?
I guess I'll just reiterate that we did do this public forum. I personally reached out to the owners of the buildings, made sure that everybody immediately adjacent to these parcels came, and people beyond that scope who live in Leeds. And there were some initial concerns and questions, more specifically related to Mr. Duval, who owns the former Berkshire Cable building on River Road. His idea of creating self-storage, there were some questions about that, which is no longer relevant, as Mr. Fiden said, but people were concerned about the rodent population increasing and things of that nature. But were reassured when we discussed it. Carolyn Mish presented a really good presentation that helped people understand. One of the things I'm not sure Mr. Fiden said is that we are doing this in all of our GI districts. We're rezoning them eventually, right, to OI. So this is part of a bigger picture of changing our zoning.
We're doing them in all the industrial districts that are sort of old historic Mill River sites. We're not doing it, there are basically two areas that we think should still remain GI, would be the industrial park, because we don't want to lose that, and the Packaging Corporation of America, for the same reason. Those, we don't want to have mixed use. They really are only traditional manufacturing. But yes, everything along the Mill River, we've either done or are in the process of doing.
Yeah, so I think that also helped people to understand that this is part of a kind of bigger picture. There was one other concern that got expressed, I think, for the people on, folks who live on Water Street, the building there that is under, that parcel with the building there. There was some question about whether that could increase large trucks, if there could be, if the space could be used for things that would draw more traffic. But through the explanations that were provided, I think people felt like this was a fine plan and were very much in support. So the people of Leeds felt like this is a go.
All right. The people of Leeds, some have spoken. Councilor Dwight.
It's also worth noting that there is a section that's being transferred from GI to Special Conservancy. There's a wetlands protection area, which currently is vulnerable, and this actually, and this makes a lot of sense, and from what I understand, there are no objections to that modification as well, so. And this went through legislative matters with full approval.
Great. That's good. That's actually a good point. Yeah. Okay. Any other conversation in the council? Ready to vote on at first reading? Okay. So roll call, please.
I'm sorry, did we get a motion on it?
No.
Oh, we
To
didn't?
approve.
I move approval.
I'm just like
I'll second it.
skipping left and right here. Thank you.
Counselor Bidwell?
Yes.
Counselor Carney?
Yes.
Counselor Dwight?
Yes.
Counselor Klein?
Yes.
Counselor Labarge?
Yes.
Counselor Murphy?
Yes.
Counselor Nash?
Yes.
Counselor O'Donnell?
Yes.
And Counselor Shara?
Yes.
Okay, that's approved in first reading. So, thank you, Wayne. We're going to go back up. 19102, an ordinance relative to parking on Glendale Road. It appears to modify the schedule of parking prohibited at all times spaces and deletes 4 of them on Glendale Road. On one side of the road, we have a map. It's better than me talking. There we go. So these spaces are to 125 feet northerly from the center line of the driveway to the landfill, roughly, and 450 feet southerly from that point as well. And then on the other side, 120 feet northerly and 175 feet southerly. So people know basically where that is.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so now I'll correct what I keep doing wrong all night, and I'll ask for a motion.
Move to approve, please.
Second.
Thank you very much. So now it's on the floor. Councilor Dwight.
Actually, I would defer to Councilor Nash, but essentially, this is removing all parking prohibitions that currently exist on Glendale Road because of its historic use as a landfill. Now that it is closed, these restrictions are no longer necessary because you don't have people queuing up or trucks queuing up for the landfill. So it's house cleaning. As I heard it, it was presented before us in legislative matters.
I'll defer, thank you. I'll defer to the chair of the Transportation Parking if he wants to talk, and then Councilor
That's
LeBlanc.
exactly what I was going to say. And also
Remarkably
that,
eloquent.
and that, yeah, he said it much better than me. And Counselor Labarge, this is in her ward, and she's in full support, and and positive recommendation from the TPC and from legislative matters.
It'll be very important for us to hear from the counselor from Ward 6, what her thoughts are.
For years, when the landfill was open, big 18-wheelers would be out there like 6:30 in the morning, parking there and idling. There's no reasons, the landfill is closed, to go ahead and remove it That's it.
Thank you very much, Counselor. Any other discussion? Then let's have a roll call.
Counselor Carney,
Yes.
Counselor Dwight,
Yes.
Counselor Klein,
Yes.
Counselor Labarge,
Yes.
Counselor Murphy,
Yes.
Counselor Nash,
Yes.
Counselor O'Donnell,
Yes.
Counselor Shara,
Yes.
Counselor Bidwell.
Yes. Leave it
Okay, so that's approved on first reading.
Chicken.
Now, we have 19110, an ordinance relative to bus stops on Bridge Street. This appears to modify Schedule 13, and it appears it would add a bus stop on Bridge Street, the northwest side, from a point 300 feet northeasterly from Market Street to a point 360 feet northeasterly from Market Street. So, motion on this for approval?
Move to approve.
Made and seconded. Counselor Nash, do you have anything?
Well, this is actually a continuation of the fine work that you started around Bridge Street School, of re-examining what the parking situation on Bridge Street, next to Lamprey Park, near Bridge Street School, and that one of the issues there is that there's a bus stop near Bridge Street School that it's actually not codified in city ordinance, and that in discussions with the PVTA, they felt that it was better to relocate it up the road. That's why we're adding a bus stop rather than moving a bus stop, because it's actually not in ordinance. And to locate this bus stop across the street from the post office. That in terms of public transportation, it makes sense for east and, opposite direction, in this case, east and west bus stops to be paired with each other. That's the way they like to design things. The way this was set up before, the bus stop near Bridge Street was just, the nearest eastbound, bus stop was down at the post office almost a quarter-mile away, or up at Sheldon Field. And lastly, that this is helping clear up, a confusing thing for parents parking at Bridge Street, as that most people know they shouldn't park in a bus stop, and there's a bus stop sign, and that it's prime parking for parents near the school. So I think this solves a lot of things, and positive recommendation from the TPC, and I believe, and from Legislative Matters as well.
Cool. Counselor, do you have something?
Yes, I just wanted to thank Counselor Nash. He did an amazing amount of work on this, and really discovered some of the aspects of what has led to this ordinance, and moving the non-existent bus stop that was a bus stop, which, in addition to creating more spaces, just makes a safer place for kids to be able to get picked up from school. It wasn't great having a bus pulling in as, where there's also, that's right where the crosswalk is and right where the crossing guard is. And so this really helped alleviate a lot of problems. And so thank you. I know how much work you did on this.
Thank you.
Thank you. Any other discussion? So this guy is going to go right across the street from the post office, you said, where the other bus stop is in the other direction. And I guess there's what, like a green space in front of that, I don't know what that mall thing is, or where the comic book store and whatever.
Right.
Counselor.
We were asking about that in Legislative Matters. We weren't sure of the dimensional availability of kiosk. Councilor Murphy was asking if there'd be a covered kiosk, or I think Councilor Klein, I can't remember. But and those details were a little vague, I should say. But according to Councilor Nash, the PVTA has said that the requisite room is there. It doesn't require an easement or a taking, and it is there. So this, in that respect, is a leap of faith. So.
That's sure.
Yeah, I'll just note that in the previous spot where the bus stopped, where it really shouldn't have been stopping, there were none of those things either. No kiosk or anything. But I do believe PVTA is putting down a pad for wheelchairs so that they can embark and disembark. Is that correct? Remember that discussion?
I don't have it in writing right in front of me. I will have that information for second reading. And I will note that this decision was DPW working with PVTA to come up with this location. So,
A shelter would be good only because there's one across the street, and I could imagine if it were raining, people would wait on the other side, then they would run across.
Good point.
Probably don't want that.
There-
So, Council.
well, it's actually not a good location for a shelter because
Okay.
most people disembark the bus there. They're getting off. It's, the bus route will end in town either at the courthouse or up at Smith. So most people are, they're coming back from UMass. There's not I don't think there may be a few people, but most riders are not riding from that location up to
Oh, I
Smith.
see, yeah, that's true.
So,
Makes good sense, yeah. In any event, much better than where it was, as Councilor Shara pointed out. All right, any other discussion on the bus stop? So, do we have a motion? I hope so, God. All right, so, can we have a roll call then, please?
Counselor Dwight?
Yes.
Counselor Klein?
Yes.
Counselor Labarge? Counselor Labarge?
Yes.
Counselor Murphy?
Yes.
Counselor Nash?
yes.
Counselor O'Donnell?
Yes.
Counselor Shara?
Yes.
Counselor Bidwell?
Yes.
Counselor Carney?
Yes.
Okay, approved in first reading. Now, the longest agenda item ever that Ms. Krutzler thought she had, but she was wrong. It was this one. The rules say we have to vote on everything twice, every matter twice. So the thing about the energy delegates, we have to vote on it twice, okay? And because it was made verbally, I have to read it verbatim, according to the solicitor. So this is other matters, deliberate and vote on the process by which the City Council shall designate its voting representatives to the International Code Council, ICC, for the purpose of casting 4 votes relative to the International Energy Conservation Code, IECC, and the method by which such votes shall be decided and cast. Second vote on the motion, and this is the Administrative Assistant to the City Council, I think, did a good job consolidating the motion that was spoken, originally made by Councilor Dwight, and I added a friendly amendment. It's my belief that this quote captures what we meant, but if I'm wrong, let me know. So this would be, quote, move to refer discussion of the 2021 International Energy Conservation Code, IECC, to the Community Resources Committee, which in turn will make a recommendation that will come back to the full council for a vote on November 21st, 2019, and further to ask for consideration of suspension of the rules to allow 2 votes at that meeting, with the friendly amendment that the 4 designees be the members of the committee, and that the designees be bound to transmit the opinion of the entire city council as adopted. So would someone make that? Councilor?
Well, first of all, I accept the friendly amendment.
Yep.
And then it would move this.
Okay, so you move it
Amended.
as I spoke it.
Yes, as you spoke.
Seconded by Councilor Klein. Any discussion on it or changes or anything like that? Okay, so I'll ask for a roll call then.
Counselor Klein?
Yes.
Counselor Labarge?
Yes.
Counselor Murphy?
Yes.
Counselor Nash?
Yes.
Counselor O'Donnell?
Yes.
Counselor Shara?
Yes.
Counselor Bidwell?
Yes.
Counselor Carney? Yes. Counselor Dwight?
Oh, yes.
Any new business this evening? Motion to adjourn?
So moved.
Okay, any opposed to adjournment? All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Good night.
Thank you very much.
Have all members voted who wish to do so? If all members voted who wish to do so, time for voting has expired. The clerk will display the tally. 159 in the affirmative, 0 in the negative. The consolidated amendment is adopted. House will be in a brief recess. House will be in order. Mr. Strauss of Mattapoisett offers an amendment in the hands of the clerk. Clerk will read the amendment.
Amendment number 1324, Representative Strauss of Mattapoisett and other members of the House move to amend the bill by adding the following sections. Chapter 94 of the General Laws appearing in the 2016 official edition is hereby amended.
Chair hears no objection. The clerk will dispense with the further reading of the amendment. Chair hears none. Question comes on the adoption of the amendment. The chair recognizes Mr. Strauss of Mattapoisett.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, and through you to the members. I rise in support of this amendment, but I wanted to take a moment to explain what it is. It's an issue that in one form or another has been around the legislature for the last few sessions, and it deals with an issue that has an important economic value in terms of the seafood industry for Massachusetts and how it's marketed, frankly, around the world. And this relates to not the typical, this is lobsters we're talking about, sorry. This relates to not the typical full lobster on the plate, but for various historic and health and fisheries management reasons, the breaking apart of the lobsters either at sea or in the course of the processing or the way they're presented for public sale or in restaurants has been highly regulated and frankly continues to be. But some reforms have been able to be done, and it's led to increased availability of the kinds of lobster products that the public is looking for and wants. And so 2 sessions ago, myself and my colleague from Provincetown brought before this body, and it was approved and has proved a great success, to allow within certain size restrictions the marketing of lobster tails. This has been actually great for those who harvest at sea, those who process at land, and the ultimate consumers themselves. An additional issue has been brought up in the last couple of sessions on further allowing what are called lobster parts, the rest of the pieces, to in some way be possessed by distributors and marketed to the public. Those of you from last session may recall that just to make sure the public health interests and the marketing and economic issues were being addressed, this legislature directed last session that the Division of Marine Fisheries conduct a study, and this is, if I could call it that, a real study, which involved quite an extensive review by the Division of Marine Fisheries on all of the factors, and that report was provided to the legislature and made public in December. Some additional input was required earlier this year from the Department of Public Health, which has parallel provisions governing lobsters, and I only take the time today to present this because for different reasons, repeatedly over the last couple of sessions, the Senate, our friends down the hall, had a different take on this issue. I can assure the members today what's being presented to you is consistent with the Division of Marine Fisheries study and is actually the language that, to be finalized, has been drafted inside the Department of Public Health and the Division of Marine Fisheries. So the administration has been very, very helpful throughout this process. My hope is that with your agreement today in approving this amendment, the Senate will also be on the same page as the House and the Governor's office. So I'm very optimistic about this and hope that for many years we do not have to be legislating on the issue of lobsters again. So I urge its adoption, and again I want to thank a number of colleagues, but especially the woman from Provincetown, our colleague who has additional fisheries responsibilities in terms of her assignments, and her work has been invaluable in trying to keep everybody focused on this. And also my colleague from Wareham is on this amendment, and as you can imagine, those of us from the coast have an extra focus on this. And so again, I hope it's adopted. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Question comes on the adoption. The amendment, the chair recognizes Ms. Peak of Provincetown.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I rise in support of this Amendment 1324, and I would like to thank my colleague from Mattapoisett for his tenacity in pursuing this issue and bringing us to the delicious resolution of it that we have today. So what this amendment is about is us authorizing the appropriate regulatory agencies to allow for the creation of, possession, sale, cooking, whatever it might be, the processing of lobster parts. As the gentleman from Mattapoisett said, several years ago, we sort of stuck our toe into the water, so to speak, in allowing the processing of lobster tails with certain size requirements. And quite honestly, the reason we wanted to take our time and make sure that we're doing this right is we checked with law enforcement as well as the Division of Marine Fisheries. And lobster tails, you can kind of tell easily whether somebody has an undersized or illegal animal. But when you're starting to talk about claws and other lobster parts, we were concerned that there might be a black market for lobsters, or illegal lobsters from out of state would be brought into the Commonwealth. Well, working with the Environmental Police, Division of Marine Fisheries, and most recently with the Department of Public Health, I can assure you that all of these state agencies have taken a hard look at this and are prepared to move forward with it. And this is great news. It's great news on the economic front. It's great news because it means shoreside jobs at facilities that already exist in New Bedford especially, and those jobs processing the lobsters. It means additional revenue and a real shot in the arm for our lobster fishery here in Massachusetts, which is a vital part of our fisheries portfolio, in effect, that we have. You know, during the summer season, if you're a lobsterman, let's say that fishes from anywhere from any of our beautiful coastal communities, there are enough little clam shacks and restaurants open, and with a robust tourism industry, there are plenty of people there going to restaurants who will buy shell-on lobster. You know, see them swim, the lobster boil, the clam bake, all of that kind of thing. But as the fall starts to roll in and the lobsters are still abundant, you have fewer of those clam shacks that are open, and you have really an overabundance of lobsters that are being landed and not enough consumers that are still interested in consuming the whole lobster. So this lobster parts amendment will, so when there's an oversupply, simple economics, supply and demand, the price goes down, and that's not good for our lobster fishery. So with this bill, it will help stabilize that market. It will provide markets for Massachusetts lobstermen that currently don't exist today, and it'll provide markets for them to sell their catch. And let me assure you, the lobster industry is managed in the Commonwealth of Massachusetts and on the eastern seaboard in a very sustainable way. This is not a species that's teetering on the edge of extinction or anything like that. It is one of the most economically viable fisheries that we have here in Massachusetts. So I ask you to join with me in supporting Amendment 1324. It's a great economic shot in the arm. It's a good step forward we're taking today. And most importantly, we're leaving the public health, public safety, and management decisions about the rollout of this with the appropriate agencies of the Environmental Police, DPH, and DMF. Thank you for your support.
Question comes on the adoption of the amendment. All those in favor say aye. All those opposed, no. The ayes have it. The amendment is adopted. The House will be in a brief recess. Chair would like to take this opportunity to introduce to the right of the rostrum the Iorio family, Matthew, Jessica, Max, Ellie, Trevor, and Kylie. They are the guests of Representative Jay Barrows. Welcome. House will be in order. Ms. Peisch of Wellesley offers an amendment and hands the clerk. Clerk will read the amendment.
Amendment number 1363. Ms. Peisch of Wellesley moves to amend the bill by adding the following section. Section blank. The Executive Office of Administration and Finance shall report to the Senate and House chairs of the Committee on Ways and Means and the Senate and House chairs on the Joint Committee on Education.
Chair hears no objection. The clerk will dispense with the further reading of the amendment. Chair hears none. Question comes on the adoption of the amendment. The chair recognizes Ms. Peisch of Wellesley.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, and through you to the members, I rise in support of amendment number 1363. This relates to the Child Care Development Block Grant. In March of 2018, the federal government increased the child development block grants by $5.8 billion over a 2-year period, which translates to over $29 million a year for the Commonwealth. This is obviously a very positive development. There has, however, been some confusion with respect to how Massachusetts is spending this money, and questions arose as to whether the state met the requirement that these funds supplement and not supplant the money that we were already spending on childcare for low-income families. While the federal government has indicated that we have in fact met that obligation, because in FY19 we in fact spent far in excess, the increase in the money spent on this was far in excess of the $29.4 million. Nonetheless, a number of questions remain as to exactly how we are spending these grant dollars. So this amendment would simply require the administration, Office of Administration and Finance, to report to the chairs of both the House and Senate Ways and Means committees, as well as the Joint Committee on Education, but no later than October 19th, and again on December 15th of 2019, expenditures related to the objectives of the Federal Child Care Development Block Grant. I ask for your favorable action on this amendment. Thank you.
Question comes on the adoption of the amendment. All those in favor say aye. All those opposed, no. The ayes have it. The amendment is adopted. The House will be in a brief recess. Chair would like to inform the members that at 4:30 in room 348, categories in housing, mental health, and disability services will be held. Again, at 4:30 in room 348, the categories are housing, mental health, and disability services.
Mr. Jones of North Reading now moves that the House stand in recess till the hour of 6:45. And dinner is being served in the members' lounge immediately, if not sooner. Attention members of the House. The consolidated amendments of Health and Human Services and Elder Affairs is now on the third reading desk, available for the members. Chair will notify the members that in room 348 at 8 p.m. will be public health. House will be in order. Mr. Mikowitz of Boston, Office of the Consolidated Amendment in the hands of the clerk. Clerk will read the consolidated amendment.
This is Consolidated Amendment D in the categories of Health and Human Services and Elder Affairs. The fiscal note is $8,059,875. All of the amendments in the categories have been accounted for. Mr. Markowitz of Boston and others move to amend the bill in Section 2 in item 4000-5 by inserting after the word violence in line 5 the following words, provided further that not
If
less
there be
than...
no objection, the clerk will dispense with the reading of the paper. The chair has none. Question now is on the amendment. The chair recognizes Ms. Benson Lunenburg.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, and through you to the members, I rise in support of the Consolidated Amendment D, Health and Human Services and Elder Affairs. We take pride in our achievements here in the Commonwealth when it comes to health care policy and outcomes. Even as we face strong headwinds from Washington, D.C., we lead the country in health insurance enrollment, health care access, and our citizens are among the healthiest in the nation because of it. This comes at a cost, of course, as healthcare spending makes up the largest portion of our budget, at about 46% this year. This includes funding for Mass Health, the State Employee Health Insurance Program, and mental health services. With the various healthcare reform policies we've passed into law since 2006, Massachusetts has become a national model for other states looking to increase access to care and quality. This budget provides considerable supports for seniors by increasing funding for the Mass Health Nursing Home supplemental rates by almost 10%. We are also increasing the amount of resources given to councils on aging to their highest levels ever. I would like to thank the Speaker as well as Chairman of Ways and Means for prioritizing healthcare access, quality, and affordability in this budget. I urge my colleagues to support the consolidated amendment. Thank you.
Chair recognizes Ms. Walsh of Newton.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, and through you to the members, I rise to speak in support of this consolidated amendment. As the newly appointed House Chair of the Committee on Elder Affairs, I'm learning so much about the challenges that those of us who are aging in Massachusetts face. And I'm so proud to be supporting this amendment, which supports the critical services that those who are aging in this state need and deserve. This budget is a very strong budget for elder affairs. In this budget, we increased nursing home supplemental rates by $30 million over last year's appropriation and over House 1, a cumulative total of $357.1 million. This budget expands the Medicare Savings Program. This budget includes a priority of mine, the Geriatric Mental Health Services Program, a critical service that meets the mental health needs of people who are aging. We also, in this budget, increase home-delivered and congregate meals by $2.5 million to accommodate the increased participation in Council on Aging activities. Additionally, as a result of this process of amendments and debate, we have added $5 million more for a further increase to nursing home supplemental rates. I cannot emphasize enough how important this is. The nursing home industry is in crisis in our state, and we are stepping up and responding to those needs. Additionally, we have approved $750,000 for the Meals on Wheels program, increasing the numbers of meals served throughout the Commonwealth. Additionally, recognizing the special needs of the LGBTQ community, we are supporting training on the needs of that community for a range of home care service providers. And finally, we are granting $1.45 million additional to councils on aging for the full funding support of the service incentive grants and infrastructure costs of local communities. I am very proud of the budget that we are offering to the folks who are aging in Massachusetts, and I urge my colleagues to vote in favor of this consolidated amendment.
Roll call being required. The roll call machine is now open. Remain open for 4 minutes. Court officers, some of the members indicate a roll call is in progress.